are listening to STR, the Sunday Times Radio. Culture, music, and beyond.
Welcome back to Watch the Icon, the podcast where legendary timepieces aren't just discussed, they are decoded. I'm Sophia Brontwine, the publisher of the Sunday Times, and in the 6th episode of our 10-part series, we sail into the stormy waters of the 1970s once again. A decade that was unkind to Swiss watchmakers, but brilliant for bold ideas. Last time, we talked about the Rolex Daytona, the chronograph that burned rubber and rewrote the rules. Today, we look at a watch born not in the pits, but in the penthouse. A timepiece forged from crisis, made of steel, priced like gold, and sketched, famously, over oysters and wine. This is the story of the Patek Philippe Nautilus, the watch that dared to ask, what if the world's most conservative watchmaker made a sports watch? And more audacious still, what if it became its most iconic creation? Before we dive deeper into the Nautilus, let's pause and go further back, because to grasp the quiet revolution that steel sports watch represented, we need to understand the house it disrupted from the inside. Patek Philippe isn't just any Swiss watchmaker. It's a cornerstone of horological history, founded not by one man, but by two visionaries from two very different worlds. Our story begins in 1839 in Geneva, a city already known for fine watchmaking. Enter Antoine Norbert de Patek, a Polish cavalry officer turned refugee. After fighting in the November uprising against Russian rule, he fled Poland and eventually found his way to Switzerland. There, he reinvented himself not as a soldier, but as a businessman, a patriot, and an aesthete. Patek had a keen eye for quality and a deep desire to create. In 1839, he teamed up with a Czech-born watchmaker named Francois Čapek to form Patek, Čapek & Cie. Their partnership yielded finely crafted pocket watches and gained traction among European elites. But by 1844, philosophical and financial differences drove them apart. Čapek would go on to found his own eponymous brand, one that would be revived more than a century later. Patek, however, was about to meet someone who would change everything. At the 1844 Paris Exposition, Patek encountered a French inventor, Jean-Adrien Philippe. Philippe had just unveiled an innovation that would change the very anatomy of the wristwatch, the keyless winding system. Before this, pocket watches had to be wound and set with a separate key, an impractical and often lost accessory. Philippe's crown-based system allowed the wearer to wind the watch and set the time using a simple knob, a radical improvement in everyday usability. Patek was impressed. The two men partnered, and in 1845, Patek Philippe & Cie was born. Patek and Philippe weren't just artisans, they were strategic thinkers. They saw the value of aligning their timepieces with heads of state and titans of industry. Their clients? Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, Pope Pius IX, Russian Tsars, Indian Maharajas, American industrialists. By the late 19th century, Patek Philippe had established itself as a watchmaker of kings, and not just in terms of patronage. The watches themselves pushed boundaries, combining elegant design with horological firsts. In 1868, the firm created one of the world's first Swiss wristwatches, decades before they became the norm. In 1889, they patented the perpetual calendar mechanism. In 1925, they unveiled the first wristwatch with a perpetual calendar. But the true turning point came in the 20th century, when another powerful family entered the picture. In the 1930s, amid the Great Depression, Patek Philippe was struggling financially. Enter the Stern family, owners of a dial-making company that had been supplying Patek for years. The Sterns acquired the brand in 1932 and have remained at its helm ever since. Their leadership transformed Patek Philippe into a modern powerhouse, while fiercely guarding its independence. Under the Sterns, Patek introduced the Calatrava, the perpetual calendar chronograph, and the mind-bending Henry Graves' Super Complication, a bespoke pocket watch with 24 complications commissioned by a New York banker in the 1930s. It remains the most complicated watch in the world for over 50 years. Fast forward to today. Thierry Stern, the fourth generation of the family, is president of Patek Philippe. He oversees the brand with the same philosophy that began with Antoine Norbert de Patek, combining timeless design with obsessive attention to detail and, above all, restraint. Patek doesn't chase trends, it defines eras, which is precisely why the Nautilus, launched in the disco age in stainless steel with a porthole-shaped case, was such a bombshell. Let's rewind the reel to 1976, Geneva. The quartz crisis, or revolution, depending on which side of the Alps you stood, was in full swing. Cheap, reliable electronic watches from Japan flooded the market. Swiss brands were hemorrhaging money, merging, folding, desperately pivoting. And in the middle of this storm, Patek Philippe was losing ground. Its gold dress watches, no matter how beautiful, suddenly looked old-world, even irrelevant, to a new generation of collectors who wore jeans, flew first class, and wanted watches to match their lives, not their fathers. Meanwhile, a new breed of luxury sports watch was emerging, and it was led by a very familiar face. Yep, you guessed it, him again. Gérald Genta, the most prolific, visionary, and quietly disruptive watch designer of the 20th century. Just 4 years earlier, he had rocked the industry with the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, a luxury sports watch in stainless steel, with an integrated bracelet, industrial styling, and a price tag higher than a gold Patek. Critics scoffed, collectors hesitated, but soon the Royal Oak became a sensation. It gave AP an identity, it gave steel credibility, and it gave Genta free rein to push boundaries further. Legend has it that Genta conceived the Nautilus while dining alone in a Geneva hotel, across the room from Patek Philippe executives. Inspired by ship portholes and the idea of a watch that could accompany its wearer from sea to city, he sketched the design in 5 minutes on a hotel napkin. The result? A watch unlike anything Patek Philippe had ever made. In 1976, Patek Philippe introduced the Nautilus reference 37001. The response? Confusion, curiosity, and a slow burn that would eventually become a bonfire. Let's break it down. The Nautilus was large, 42 mm, which was enormous by the standards of the day. Its case was neither round nor square, but somewhere in between, inspired by a ship's porthole, complete with ears on either side that resembled hinge brackets. The bezel was octagonal, but with softened edges, a subtle nod to the Royal Oak, yet wholly its own. The dial was a horizontal ribbed blue, darkening at the edges like a twilight sky, and the bracelet was fully integrated, tapering, articulated, and made of steel. Steel from Patek Philippe. This was scandalous. Even though the Royal Oak had paved the way, Patek was still Patek, and for many collectors, a steel sports watch from the house of perpetual calendars and Calatravas felt dissonant. To make matters bolder, Patek priced the Nautilus at around 3,100 Swiss francs, higher than most gold watches. The campaign tagline: "One of the world's costliest watches is made of steel." It was audacious, provocative, and in hindsight, genius. The reference 37001 was powered by the caliber 28255C, a thin, ultra-reliable automatic movement based on the Jaeger-LeCoultre 920, the same movement used in the Royal Oak 5402. But where the Royal Oak was angular and aggressive, the Nautilus was curved and contemplative. Its case construction was unique. Built from a monoblock mid-case, sealed with a bezel, and case bag that screwed in from the sides. This design made it more water-resistant than most dress watches, though not a true diver. The bracelet was a marvel, each link beveled and brushed by hand, tapering elegantly, sitting flush with the wrist. It was less brutalist than the Royal Oak, more fluid, like a piece of nautical architecture shrunk to wrist size. Patek offered no complications, no date magnifier, and only 2 lines of text on the dial. It was a minimalist masterpiece, but it took time for the world to catch up. The 3700, sometimes nicknamed the Jumbo, was produced until 1990. It was joined by smaller models like the 3800 and rare variants in gold and two-tone, but still remains the soul of the line. For decades, the Nautilus was appreciated, but not worshipped. It was a quieter sibling to the Royal Oak, admired by those in the know, but rarely front-page news. That changed in the 2000s. Vintage steel sports watches began to skyrocket in value. Collectors rediscovered the early Genta designs, and the Patek Philippe Nautilus, long considered the underdog, suddenly became the ultimate statement. Then came reference 5711. Launched in 2006 to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Nautilus, the reference 57111A took everything that made the 3700 special and modernized it. Slightly larger at 40mm, slightly thicker with a 3-part case, powered by Patek's in-house caliber 324SC, visible through a sapphire caseback, and with a newly refined bracelet and clasp. It was a hit. Then it was a craze. Then it was unobtainable. The 5711 became the watch of the 2010s and early 2020s, worn by everyone from Brad Pitt to LeBron James, to world leaders and startup founders. Waitlists stretched to a decade, grey market prices triple, social media poured jet fuel on the fire, and then Patek did the unthinkable. In 2021, they announced the discontinuation of the 5711. The watch world lost its mind. To say farewell, Patek released one final edition, the 5711 with an olive green dial, followed by a Tiffany-stamped model in the brand's signature robin egg blue, limited to just 170 pieces. One of those sold at auction for $6.5 million, making it one of the most expensive steel watches ever sold. This wasn't just hype, it was history. And it proved what Gérald Genta always knew, that great design, given enough time, becomes immortal. The Nautilus family now includes complications that Patek once reserved for its dress watches. Reference 5712 with moonphase, power reserve and date. Reference 5980 chronograph with robust presence. Reference 5990 travel time chronograph, a favorite of frequent flyers. Reference 5740 perpetual calendar in white gold, the most complicated Nautilus ever. And let's not forget the full gold references. The white gold 5811, launched in 2022, picked up where the 5711 left off. Slightly larger, subtly evolved, unmistakably Nautilus. Each model keeps the spirit intact. Elegance, precision, understatement, with just a whisper of rebellion. The Nautilus matters because it changed everything, not with noise, but with nuance. It showed that a luxury watch didn't need to be loud, that sport could be sophisticated, that steel could be sacred. It transformed Patek Philippe from a heritage brand into a cultural force. It gave collectors something casual to wear on weekends, and then made that weekend piece the most coveted wristwatch on earth. It taught us that design has patience, that the most radical ideas often start quietly, and that true icons don't need to shout. The Patek Philippe Nautilus was born from a sketch, launched into skepticism and rose, slowly, steadily, to become the emblem of modern horology. If the Royal Oak is a rebel, the Nautilus is a poet. And today, it's not just a watch. It's a mood, it's a philosophy, it's a legend. That's it for episode 6 of Watch the Icon. The Patek Philippe Nautilus began as a steel provocation and evolved into a symbol of elegance, rarity, and restrained rebellion. It didn't just join the conversation about what luxury could be, it redefined the terms entirely. Next time, we leave the portholes and penthouses behind and head back to the racetrack, but with a twist. Because in episode 6 we explore the story of a square that broke the mold. a watch that rewrote the rules of shape, color and technology, and became inseparable from one of cinema's coolest moments. Yes, we're talking about the Tag Heuer Monaco, the world's first square-cased, water-resistant automatic chronograph. A watch launched in 1969 and immortalized by Steve McQueen in Le Mans. It wasn't just avant-garde, it was revolutionary. If you've been enjoying the series, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review and share Watch the Icon with your fellow horology enthusiasts. Got a Nautilus on your wrist? Show us how you wear it. We're always watching. Until next time, remember, true icons don't conform. They carve their own shape into time.